Hey everyone, my name is WyrmsEye and I welcome you back to another episode of the Battle Spot Factory, our VGC Battle Spot series. Second episode with my Birmingham Regional's adjusted team of Torkoal, Hariyama, Mimikyu, Snorlax, Metagross and Tapu Koko. If you didn't see the episode that was done on Tuesday, do go check it out. Obviously, gives a bit of background to some of the changes that we've made as from the team review episode that I did. Also check that out if you haven't already. So we went yesterday with a very quick win and a very sobering loss. We were able to pretty much get our strategy up straight away in the first game, but the second game our opponent very cleverly denied us full use of our Trick Room turns, and that basically solidified their opportunity to wrap up the game after our Trick Room expired. But enough about yesterday, we're going to be jumping into a battle here. So a Japanese rated opponent, 1779, so very highly rated on this ladder, with a team of Arcanine, Porygon 2, Tapu Lele, Tapu Koko, Gigalith and Celesteela. So, pretty standardish team. The Tapu Lele is the slight anomaly with this team. The rest you can sort of see going together pretty well, but the Tapu Lele is sort of like a shoehorn. Normally you would expect something like a Katana, possibly even a Tapu Fini would probably be better suited for that team, but still a very threatening team. Obviously has its own Trick Room mode, but also has a very offensive fast mode, so we do have to be careful. And I think I want to lead with Metagross. Do I want to lead with Mimikyu though? Not really. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave Metagross and Tapu Koko here. I am going to bring Mimikyu in the back. And I think alongside that I am going to need Snorlax. So just lock that in time, but yeah, Gigalith could be the big sticking point for our team, given the setup that we're using. We do obviously have Metagross, which may have to be not use Explosion, but more for its Hammer Arm ability. As we see Tapu Lele, Tapu Koko lead from my opponents, as we lead Metagross and Tapu Koko as well. So we see Tapu Koko's Electric Surge go first from my opponent's side, and then their Tapu Lele's Psychic Surge. So we are aware of that the Lele isn't scarfed, which is a good thing. We're not 100% sure about the Tapu Koko, but potentially a good position here. So with this in mind, I'm just going to go straight for the Meteor Mash onto the Tapu Lele. I feel fairly safe in doing that. And do I want to go straight for a Dazzlingly, a VGC17 onto this Tapu Koko? Yes, I do actually. Whether we pick up the knockout or not, I'm not sure, but if we get relatively close, we'll be in a good position nonetheless. This Tapu Koko is slightly bulkier than normal, so in terms of dealing damage, it's slightly weaker, but it's also slower as well. But it should be able to take the hits relatively decently, as in good measure. Depending what my opponent brings in, I wouldn't be too disappointed if it's the Gigalith, because any chip damage onto that will be a bonus for us. They are taking their time here, so probably thinking what's the best route that they can take on this particular turn. I don't think the Lele has anything that it can necessarily knock Metagross out with, except possibly a Shadow Ball. if we do see a Shadow Ball, I'd be slightly disappointed, but it would be the nature of the game. So this VyrmsEye going into the Arcanine, not going to be super effective, but still good damage to deal onto it. It isn't protecting, so should be looking at around 30 to 40%, which will be solid. As we see the Tapu Lele just go for the Psychic onto the Tapu Koko. As you can see, the bulk, meaning that we do survive pretty well there. As the Tapu Lele goes down to our Meteor Mash. So we have removed the Tapu Lele from the field. I would imagine that my opponent will bring back in their Tapu Koko. Because the play then would be to Thunderbolt our Tapu Koko and Flare Blitz our Metagross. That would make the most sense to me. Will we actually see Gigalith? Interesting. That does raise a slight problem for us. Obviously this Metagross is our best way of dealing with Gigalith at the moment, so we do need to preserve it. And I don't think our Thunderbolt will pick up the Arcanine from this range. So I'm going to switch Mimikyu into the Metagross slot, and I am still going to go for the Thunderbolt into the Arcanine here. If we can get as much damage off onto it as possible, that would be a bonus. Obviously a crit would be ideal, and that looks like it's Assault Vested as well. So Flare Blitz into the Mimikyu does mean that it's going to break the disguise. What is this Gigalith going for? Just the Rock Slide, so we'll knock out the Tapu Koko. Does a fair amount of damage to the Mimikyu. I don't know whether I want to bring in the Torkoal here and threaten Solar Beam onto the Gigalith, or whether I want to go for Metagross and risk the Flare Blitz not KOing. I think I need to bring out the Torkoal here. Realistically, I'm in no good position here, so I could elect Trick Room here. I could elect to not. Yeah, I don't think I played this one particularly well either. I am going to Solar Beam into the Gigalith slot. I think I can survive any Rock-type move that it could throw at it, apart from a Z move. Mimikyu obviously goes down to the Flare Blitz, as we can see, doing a lot of recoil, but it's showing a berry. Jeez. Not good. Rock Slide does go off. Does a lot of damage to our Torkoal, and I think that's game now. Solar Beam should be able to pick up the knockout here onto the Gigalith, but at this stage it doesn't really matter. And you can't even pick up the knockout, and we see another 50% berry on this Gigalith. So a lot of these Gigaliths are running very bulky setups as well, so how could I improve my game plan here? It's a very bulky Arcanine, because Thunderbolt, even under Psychic Terrain, normally does a lot more to... it's got to be a bulkier Arcanine, because offensive Arcanine takes about 40 to 50% with Thunderbolt under Psychic Terrain, so... Could I have gone Boom? Not really. Gigalith is still the big problem there, so I am just going to run here. There's no real point playing this out. Flare Blitz and Rock Slide, or any rock move basically from the Gigalith, would be sufficient to clean up the game. Heck, he could even go for Earthquake if he wanted to. He would be risking me using Protect, but at that stage I think it didn't really matter. And as I said before, Gigalith is one of those Pokemon that I really do need to deal with very carefully with this team, and I don't think I brought enough to the table to actually properly deal with the threat that it brought to the table. Obviously the Arcanine switching in meant that we were under threat from a Flare Blitz from it. Given that it was so bulky, we might have been able to take a hit, but it wouldn't have been ideal. That's probably going to be one that I'm going to have to look back on, but as you can see, well played Gigalith. I don't really have a game plan for them, because getting under Trick Room is not necessarily the best option for me, especially considering that my Snorlax is actually slower under Trick Room than the Gigalith. Hariyama would have been a better choice, but against Tapu Koko and Tapu Lele, it's a very difficult game to play with, so there's always going to be difficulties that I would have to navigate around, so we did have options. We could have led Hariyama and Metagross and then decided to switch into Mimikyu. Could have gone for an Explosion, but that would have meant that we still would have had to have dealt with Gigalith later on in the game, so yeah, I think we had a bit of difficulty in dealing with that. I think Hariyama made the most sense. Yeah, so perhaps we need to consider bringing Hariyama a bit more often to that sort of matchup. So, taken a second loss with this team across the games that we played so far, so we are roughly back down to where we were on the ladder. Let's choose a different type of music. Maybe that's what we need, a bit of a more upbeat tone of music. And we find another Japanese opponent. 1590s, I believe, was the rating. Team of Drifblim, Tapu Koko, Gigalith, Kartana, Arcanine and Mimikyu. So, we do see Mimikyu and Gigalith, so it does have a very good Trick Room mode, but we also do see that the Drifblim is there, so Tailwind, a potentially big option for my opponent. No Tapu Lele, so I don't know what this Drifblim will be carrying in terms of the item. My best guess would obviously be the Electric Seed to go hand in hand with the Tapu Koko. But I think Gigalith here makes a lot of sense. I think Hariyama here does make a lot of sense. Do I want to go Hariyama Mimikyu though? Let's go Hariyama Mimikyu. Torkoal is going to be good here just because it deals with Kartana and Tapu Koko pretty well, and Mimikyu itself. And I think we will bring the Snorlax for good measure. So, yes, getting rid of the Gigalith is going to be crucial here. We do have opportunities to do so. But it all depends how my opponent leads here. I can quite easily see a Mimikyu Tapu Koko lead potentially coming out. But it's a straight Mimikyu and Gigalith lead, so there are a bit of a mind games here now, because Gigalith does have to be wary of Hariyama's ability to deal significant damage to it, but my opponent's Mimikyu also has to be very considerate of the fact that we could also Trick Room to deny him his Trick Room. And there's also the Play Rough threat from the Mimikyu as well. So what I am going to do is I am going to fake out Gigalith and Trick Room. This play means that if the Gigalith protects, we get a little bit of chip damage, nothing too serious. If they decide to Trick Room, it's a Twinkle Tackle. Ew. Ew, 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 ew. We won't survive that. I'm glad we didn't close combat though, although we would have got some decent damage off onto the Gigalith, so swings and roundabouts. As you can see, that picks up the knockout onto Hariyama, and that puts us in a really difficult position now. Okay, gonna take an educated risk here. What's he got in the back to deal with? Kartana would probably be my worst case scenario, but Arcanine. Switch Gigalith into Arcanine, would that make sense? Yeah, unfortunately I can see that happening. So I think my best bet is to go for the Solar Beam onto the Gigalith, and I am just going to Shadow Claw this Mimikyu, break its disguise. Gigalith could protect, it could switch out. I would say I'm kind of hoping for the latter, but it's a very difficult one to play here, and yeah, the Twinkle Tackle was a real difficult struggle for me, and Kartana comes in, so that Solar Beam isn't going to be doing too much. We could have got an Eruption off here, and that does make me pretty sad actually. Maybe we should have considered that. We do get the Shadow Claw onto the Mimikyu. Do break the disguise. And it's just to play rough into our Mimikyu as well, so I'm going to switch Torkoal out for Snorlax. I'm fairly comfortable with Shadow Clawing the Mimikyu here. We should have enough damage to deal with it, barring a protect. Yeah. I'm being outplayed today, guys. doesn't make me feel very good. Smart Strike into the Mimikyu. Yeah, this is going to hurt a lot. So we do see a Beast Boost from the Kartana. We do have to bring back in Torkoal. We know that it's got Gigalith in the back. How many turns of Trick Room? 2. Do we know all 4 of his Pokemon? We have an unknown 4th. Right, belly drum time. I still think we can clutch this out. Obviously the Kartana is more likely to protect here. I am fearful that the Gigalith will probably know Wide Guard. No Protect though, so we do get this Eruption off. We'll knock out both Pokemon, so very nice for us. So we don't know what my opponent's last is. We know there's Gigalith, and we know it's taken slight chip damage. And it's Tapu Koko. Okay. So, okay. If Gigalith has Wide Guard, that would mean that Koko would probably go for Protect. But we can keep the Koko preoccupied here. I think I need to go for a Facade into the Koko, and I will just Eruption with my Torkoal. I am expecting Wide Guard from the Gigalith. No Wide Guard. Well, that means that the Tapu Koko goes down. So the Facade is going to go into this Gigalith, which is slightly unfortunate, but generally I will actually take that over the situation that we got, and the Facade means that we are going to be doing just enough damage to put it into the red. But now that the Trick Room expires, Gigalith is pretty much done for. So not protecting the Koko was a really strange idea. Must have been hoping that he was going to get a flinch or something. But I don't necessarily agree with the play that he made. That being said, I think we have clutched a win from the jaws of defeat there, somehow. I think more because our opponent choked by not protecting the Tapu Koko at the very least. It meant that, yeah, it's a very difficult one to really navigate here. I think if they protected Tapu Koko, they would have been a good spot, because I think the Thunderbolt from a Tapu Koko should be able to do decent damage, if not pick up the KO onto the Snorlax. And Snorlax, even with a +6 crunch, I don't think can suitably knock out the Gigalith. So maybe in hindsight, actually going for crunch onto the Gigalith was a safer play in general, because the Eruption covered any potential Koko not protecting. But it swings and roundabouts basically. Because the Eruption went off and we got it in, it made sense. So Yes. Interesting end to the battle there. I don't feel 100% like I should have won that. I didn't play all that well, and I think you can probably tell by the nature of my voice that I'm not fully convinced about the win there. But it is Pokemon. We have to live and take stock of the decisions that we make. So my opponent there obviously chose not to protect there, whether by willingness or if the Coco was even choiced as an item, that could have meant that he didn't have an option to protect, or even Assault Vest. So we won't know really. It's just one of those things. So I hope you enjoyed today's episode, guys. Please like, comment and subscribe if you want to see more VGC content, whether you like this video and whether you've got any comments going forward. But until next time on the Battle Spot Factory, I will see you again. Goodbye for now.